tabled space. If the numeral is equal to or less than 100, the vessel is assumed to be safely loaded with respect to longitudinal hull strength. If the numeral is greater than 100, the vessel is not safely loaded, and the loads must be changed and rearranged so that the net numeral becomes less than 100. And this is a manual calculation form that was done on T2 tankers. As you, the student, should know now by asking yourself such things as, what is a net numeral? What is the still water bending moment? How do I proceed? How does the preceding theories in strength of materials and strength of ships apply to the worksheet shown on figure 10-13? What basic assumptions are made when the designer constructs such a worksheet? To explain what happens to the theory and the strength calculations will be simplified so that the officer aboard the ship can quickly and accurately check to see if the proposed loading condition will overstress the ship's hull. First, see what is meant by the stress numeral. Our calculations lead us to the longitudinal hull girder bending moments. It is convenient common practice to attribute a signed number of 100 to the maximum permissible bending moment. If the calculation method is set up in this way, other calculated numbers indicating percentage of the maximum bending moment. Of course, the numeral greater than 100 indicates the ship's officer the proposed loading is unsatisfactory. The fundamental calculation of stress numeral is merely a tabulation of weight moments with the buoyancy moment subtracted from the total. The result of the bending moment applied to the hull girder located amidships. The bending moment is then multiplied by 100 and divided by the maximum permissible bending moment, so the result will be a stress numeral rather than a bending moment. What does the hull stress numeral of 100 mean? Well, at the bottom of the worksheet, shown in figure 10-13, you'll note that the still water bending moment stress, either compression or tension, equals 4.6 long tons per square inch when the hull stress numeral equals 100. You will recall that mild steel is 7 to 8 tons per square inch was the maximum safe working stress. Still water connotates a harbor condition, and the officer knows that if the hull stress is 100, the metal of the ship experienced the stress about a little more than 50% of the safe working stress. With waves, this would be more, but still within the safe working stress. Under no circumstances should the officer assume that any pounding is considered in the calculation. Pounding is when the bottom of the ship slams down on the surface of the sea and places incalculable stress on the hull. Pounding of the hull must be avoided at all costs. Although the worksheet methods of the longitudinal stress calculations is not an exact method, it is proven to be accurate enough for all practical purposes. One thing the officer should remember is that the intermediate condition of loading can most likely be more severe than the ship's final stowage, especially when additional ballast is taken to get the bow drafts deep enough to prevent pounding. Until the officer has worked through enough stress calculations to be familiar with what the hull numerals are to be expected for a variety of intermediate loading conditions for his particular ship, he should continue to do them. Normally, the longitudinal stress numeral should be calculated for the worst intermediate loading and discharge condition, the departure condition, and the worst intermediate at sea condition, and the arrival condition. The next chapter will explain how the shipboard computers can offer the alternate method of doing longitudinal hull strength calculations. And nowadays, virtually all ships of any size have a loading computer, and the hull stress are calculated for you. And that should end it today. If we continue with this, the next thing we'll talk about is recommendations for loading bulk carriers, the loading manual itself, precautions to avoid inadvertently loading, the general precautions for following the complete loading sequence, trimming, block loading, unloading, change of ballast at sea, and our conclusions. for this chapter. So there's a lot in this chapter, but there is only one chapter on longitudinal hull strength in the book. Till next time, it's been great being with you, and happy Memorial Day. And just as a reminder, our Advanced Stability course at MyTags West went very well this last week. And the next one will be July 20th to 24th in Seattle. And I'll be teaching that one also. Everybody seemed to have a good time, and everybody passed the course. So I look forward to meeting you there again. And if you have any questions, you can always send me an email, williamegeorge@gmail.com. Thank you.